Welcome, everyone. We're so happy that you're joining us. I am thrilled to welcome my friend Daisy Lee today. Daisy is a respected leader in the Qigong world with more than 25 years of teaching experience. She is the founder and principal teacher of Radiant Lotus Qigong and has been a special guest lecturer in hospitals, schools, women's clinics, senior centers, and numerous online summits. Daisy was presented with the 2020 Qigong Master of the Year Award by the World Qigong Congress in recognition of her impact on women's health and healing. She lives in Puerto Rico, where she and her partner, Mark Rule, are building the Radiant Lotus Retreat Center. Welcome, Daisy. It's always wonderful to share time and space with you.
It's so great to be here, Sharon. It's so great to see you again. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Many of us, Daisy, dream of studying with a great Qigong master at some point in our lives. And you had the stunning good fortune to have learned an 800-year-old lineage with the great Qigong master, Duan Ji Liang. I hope I said that correctly, who lived vibrantly all the way to the age of 107. Wow, drinking directly from the well. That's as close to pure nourishment as it gets. How and when did you meet this wonderful person? And what was he like? And what was it like to learn from him?
Thanks for sharing, Master Duan Ji Liang's, it was 24 years ago that I met him. And this long white beard and very humorous face and eyes. And he walked like he was slinking. Just one of these individuals. Back then he was in his 90s, in his mid 90s. And so I just thought, wow, what an opportunity to study with this man and to have the opportunity to meet his family and his disciples and just be a part of this ancient lineage, 800 years, over 800 years. And what was different about Wuji Hundun Qigong is that it's both a martial system and a healing system. And Master Duan was, you could say he was old school, an old school teacher, so very strict in some ways. He had humor, but he was more strict about his Qigong and his martial arts, more so than other, teachers that had been exposed to Western sensibilities. And what I loved about him was his humor. He'd never worked with a computer before. So when he saw a computer screen, he got out a marker and started marking on the screen. And that was pretty funny. Luckily, it wasn't indelible, Sharpie. And so he was confronted with, the new ways of the West, as well as China. He lived in Beijing and in the underground, the bottom floor of a high-rise apartment, because he always felt that he should be grounded and that it was so important to connect to the earth. And as much as, as heaven, also earth. And so I just remember his little apartment that he shared with his wife, who was, I think, probably about 30 years younger than he was. She was in her late 60s at that time, I believe, and he was already in his 90s. And so he was the chef in the family, and fantastic cook, fantastic chef. He'd go out into the markets for, in China, all the produce was fresh, and pick out his, vegetables. And he didn't really eat a lot of meat, but he would pick out his vegetables and come back and cook for us. And in this tiny little kitchen with 2 burners, he'd whip up this incredible meal. And just eggplant and potatoes and rice and, an egg dish, and just like such, the way he served it, you could see, you were you were salivating before the dishes got to the table. And that was how he was. He just welcomed people into his home. uh, if you got into any conversation about energy or qigong or martial arts, he was in like flint. There was whole stories would come forth about his upbringing. And so he came from a family lineage that served the last emperor of China. And so his family, his father, his grandfather, his ancestors were either the protectors, the martial artists that protected the emperor, but also the healers. So both traditions came together in him. And in Beijing, he would do acupuncture, he would do massage, Tuina massage. He would send you home with some of these treatments, which came from the Wuji Hundun system, which is his family style of Qigong, the 800-year lineage that he was, privy to and embodied. And so that was, that's a little bit about Master Duan. I assisted in helping bring him to North America as well. And for his first trip ever out of the country, he'd never traveled before. And so it was a really kind of astounding thing for people to meet him. And at that time, I was living in Toronto. And we had this beautiful Kew Beach Park right by the Lake Ontario. And he would come in with his swords. He brought swords back in the day when you could bring swords on the airplane. And he'd bring his one or two swords. He'd have this long pipe that he smoked frankincense in. And so he'd take a few puffs. It was this beautiful, long, elegant pipe with stones and carving in the pipe. And so he would start practice. And it would always be the Wuji Hundun first. And then he would demonstrate some of the sword play and some of the beautiful martial instruments that he had. And that was, it was amazing. It started off as a few people coming to the park to observe and find out who this man was. And then he got into one of the main papers in Toronto. So people started learning about who he was. And before you knew it, we had 200 people at the park.
Wow.
Yeah, just like waiting for him to teach them something. He was just such a figure of longevity, because, he was clearly an elder, like a sagely elder with his long white beard and, these implements that you don't usually see in the West. And he would begin. So he'd never had like tile floors before. He was used to being, very simple. So to come into a house that had tiles was like very unusual for him. And he was very independent, did everything himself. So he didn't want anyone pandering to him. But one thing I do realize, he missed his own culture after a while. Like he missed authentic Beijing food. I was cooking more Southern style. So I was cooking for him and, sharing kind of Western culture. He never experienced that before. So he wanted to, exchange cultures and see how he felt about it. But, it was a great adventure, something very, new for me, but also new for him. And definitely exciting for the students to meet this really incredible man and character. By character, I mean that he liked to see if someone was an martial artist who was there, he wanted to see what they were capable of. And so he would test them. If he sensed any kind of arrogance, he would actually turn on his martial side. And there'd been stories of how he, he'd been, some of the things that happen in China is that they challenge each other. And so he had been, spoken about, and these young martial artists wanted to test their skills on him. And to him, that's an offense, especially in your 90s. And he thought, I'm not going to take this. And so it was a 30 some odd year old young person, and he just took him on. And within like a New York second or New York minute, the guy was on the floor, and he had these a rack of I'm not sure if it's a deer horns or something like this that he also used as a weapon. So he started putting it on his head and just kind of making fun of the guy and said, away with you. We don't, this is, how dare you challenge me? And so he had his fun with the guy, and, his students and disciples had a good laugh about that.
What an amazing experience that must have been to spend time with this man. I can't even imagine what it was like for you. And it sounds like you learned something very unique from him. And what that was the topic of this session, which is Hundun. And I looked up what the definition of chaos was in the dictionary. And chaos is defined as complete disorder and confusion, turmoil, upheaval, or anarchy. And in physics, which is sometimes linked to Taoist philosophy, the word chaos describes unpredictable behavior that appears to be random. And this kind of chaotic energy is frightening for many people. And if you're what you might call a glass half full type of person, it's very easy to look around these days and see chaos everywhere. So I'm wondering, how did Master Duan see Hundun, not just from his practice, but from his longevity? And how do you personally understand chaos, and why is this practice relevant to us right now?
Those are great questions, Sharon. There's so much I could say. And, Master Duan's theory was that chaos is going to happen. Hundun happens. And so it's an opportunity for us to find the order and create order out of chaos. That is part of the beauty. So he always thought of, the opposite of chaos as beauty, and the not physical beauty of a human being so much as the beauty of balance and order. And so chaos doesn't need our help. It will manifest anyway. And what needs our support within ourselves is to find the beauty amidst the chaos. So what his system was really interesting. He had 18 movements of Wuji Hundun, and those are the 18 that have been passed down for all those generations. So what is interesting, and one of the reasons he actually wasn't a big fan of Tai Chi, even though he appreciates the beauty of it in his own way, he said everything's so choreographed. People think that life is this. It has to be, point A to point B to point C and D, etc. And he said, if you live your life that way, everything in perfect order, and you don't understand that chaos is part of that beauty as well, then you will never be able to adapt and be resilient to the changes that are necessary in order to grow. So in his 18 movements, he would have the first movement and the 18th movement in their order, the first and the last movement. But the 16 movements in between, he would say, once you learn each of the movements, you would toss it up and see what your body needed, what your heart or mind needed that day. Just, have the balance of the bookends, but in the center, you get to play and create your poetry out of those 16 movements. So that was what was so unusual about his system. Most other systems of Qigong or Tai Chi, they have a set way of learning things. And he didn't dwell on that. He wanted you to learn, but he didn't want you to dwell on perfection. Even despite the fact that there is a level of precision in his movements, as happens in martial arts, you have to be more precise. And yet there was this flow, there's this, energetic movement flowing through all his postures and movements. And they really spoke to both the martial and the healing side. So his belief also was, you can't just do martial arts. You can't just do healing arts because you won't know how to defend yourself. The combination of the two coming together is the most balanced kind of beauty, and beauty creates harmony, or harmony creates beauty. Yeah, and so that is some of the theoretical knowledge behind his movements, that one has to come into balance, whatever chaos you're going through. The earth does it in nature. Each person, each individual, each community, every country has to come into balance. You can only go extreme for so long before, it's the devolution of a society or or a person. So life will continue even after we're done our life. How do we make it beautiful? How do we create a beautiful life?
Wow, I love that. It's so Taoist in its approach. It reminds me of the I Ching in a way, that you're able to kind of read your own body and what your body needs. And that's the energetic state that you're pursuing or you're looking for to bring you back into balance. And yeah, it's so, there's so many things about what you just said that are so intrinsic to Taoism. I mean, even, going to the extreme until it has to change,
Right.
And a lot of people think that about the current time period, is that we're getting to such an extreme point that if you know the theory of yin and yang, you know that maximum yang has to turn into yin.
Right.
You have to go in that direction so far until it switches. So I really love everything that's behind this. And I'm wondering if you can tie this philosophical understanding of the practice to how human beings now can use the practice to help us deal with all the global problems that are happening these days.
I will do my best, Sharon. That's a tall order.
Well, I figure if anybody could answer that question, you could.
It's a really good point, because I do believe that our practice is what informs us. There's society all around us. There's chaos all around us, as Master Duan would say. And chaos stimulates intensity. It can stimulate potential violence, warfare, and nastiness towards our fellow human beings. And he said, that's not necessary. It will happen of its own accord, but our role in society as a cultivator and a compassionate human being, we have to know when to cut the ties We also have to know when to blend, when to smooth things out. And the theory that he had was as if we are in the eye of a storm. There is a storm around us now. And so, an emotional storm, a political storm, all kinds of disarray and chaos. But for you to understand Hundun, you have to be at the center and you have to be at peace. You have to merge with the silence so that you can actually hear. If you add to the cacophony of the noise that surrounds you, you can't hear the other. You can't even hear yourself. So the opportunity in chaos is to come into that balanced, harmonious state. And that is an opportunity for all of us. It's not just those who practice this Wuji Hundun Qigong, but Wuji Hundun Qigong will help you to understand how to come into that state easier. So you don't add to the violence, you don't add to the decimation of our society, our cultures, our people, our earth. And that's why I love his work. I love his practice because he had this, amidst all that, he had a joy for life. And it was shown through his cooking, it was shown through his joking. He was very, very physically, how would you say? It's like playful.
Playful.
Yeah, like almost slapstick sometimes, like the Three Stooges. And so his demonstrations, he was so flexible, like just how he rolled his shoulders and he would walk through, intense, crazy traffic as if they didn't exist. And to me, it was magic watching this man just walk across these multi-lane roads. It's like they didn't exist. He was so clear. He was so centered and knowing of his environment and yet knowing of himself that he could just do that. I thought that was the ultimate when I saw him do that.
What a blessing to know someone like that.
Yeah.
How wonderful. So it seems like this Qigong is something that would be good for everyone, but you are widely known for your women's specific Radiant Lotus Qigong. So how does this Qigong specifically benefit women?
That's a good question. Sharon, it benefits everyone, but women, I think there's a kind of difference here with women. And, we don't often have a chance to express the clarity. We might get emotional at times. We might not be able to find our center because of an emotional state. Our hormones are changing, things are, the family are in need. And so we're always giving out. It's almost like a horizontal alignment as opposed to a vertical alignment, which I often teach. And so it's this understanding that when you have an understanding of beauty and harmony, the martial and the healing coming together, then you can find real balance. And I think that that's often forgotten. Sometimes people think, oh, it's these, Qigong are all these flowing movements, and they are, but it's an embodiment of beauty and authority.
Yeah, like a yin yang balance is something in there, that softness, but also strength.
Exactly. And it's not that you can't access it through, the women's programs that I teach, but there is something very unique about Master Duan's system. And I think it's the stability of how he grounds his legs, how he keeps stable in his center, and then all else moves around his body, around his presence. And we have that same opportunity to do the same. So I find that, you know, the understanding of beauty and his definition of beauty, and also the authority of embodying our own body, like really uh, loving and accepting who we are and our incredible potential. You know, women are creators by nature, by biology, but our interface is always going to be, you know, not just with ourselves, but with family, with community, with our loved ones. And so how do we do that with that sense of kind of peaceful authority, and when necessary, the other type? Sometimes we have to speak up. And, you know, a lot of times when, for example, you know, with this recent events of these last 2 years, a lot of Asian people have had a lot of hate thrown at them. And it is almost expected that we would back down and not say anything. My training, my family training is don't make a fuss, don't fight, just like, you know, take a back seat and let the kooks do whatever they, you know, do with their chaos, but don't fight. And I have found through Master Dwan's understanding that sometimes you have to fight. Sometimes you have to use your voice to speak up. And that's where I think it's important, not just for women or men, but all of humanity, is that there are times you have to speak up, stand for what you believe, and you don't need to get into a fight about it, but state your case, listen, be calm, but you need to speak your truth. So
Yeah,
that's his teaching, part of his teaching to me.
yeah, yeah. I think strength is a concept that is undergoing renovation right now. And, you know, strength is not just muscle, it's not just military, it's not just fighting, but yeah, what are you willing to stand up for, you know?
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah. And anyway, well, we could talk a lot about that, but I wonder if you could share some movements that can help us realize this understanding.
By all means. Okay. So I'm going to share a few movements, and our posture at the beginning, we stand straight, shoulders relaxed and down, top point of the head directed north, bottoms of the feet directed down. Often, Master Dwan starts with a ball of energy at the lower dantian, and we sink our weight into the kwa, stack the weight onto one leg, use your arms for balance, and then open to shoulder width apart. Okay. This movement that I'm going to share with you is the swimming dragon, and it's used as a warm-up exercise. And so it's like we're inviting someone to dance. One hand is extended, the other hand is going to brush over the dantian, but without touching. So we have a little bit of a buffering field, and we just turn at the waist. When you've gone as far as you can, extend the opposite hand. This hand now brushes across the lower dantian. And notice that my shoulders are down, so I'm not hiking up my shoulders. I'm just gently feeling the air, releasing any overheated energy or deficient energy at the lower dantian. One hand up, one hand across. And we usually synchronize our breathing with the movement. So if you'll use one hand as the inhale and the other hand when it extends as the exhale. Gently inhaling deep into the lower dantian, a slow, smooth, gentle breath. Switch hands and exhale. Inhale and exhale. So this would be his warm-up to clear the space of the dantian, the external field, the Wei Qi field outside the lower dantian, or the center of the body. And just take a few more breaths at your own pace. Inhale and exhale. And just make these swipes smaller and smaller. Come back into the Wuji posture. Wuji posture is when the hands are facing the lower dantian. And it's like there's a field, a buffering field. And just feel that between your hands and your body. So each of these movements comes back into this posture. Often we do meditation in this posture. One of the other movements that I wanted to share with you is with the double sword fingers. So we're going to hold the pinky and the ring fingers back, and the index and middle fingers are together. Okay, so gently stand. The knees are soft but not mushy. And we're going to have these parallel fingers all the way through. Okay, so we're going to ride up to the right side. Inhale up to shoulder height. Exhale down and just gently soften the knees when you come down. Inhale up the left side, gently stretching the palms away. Exhale down to the center. Inhale up to shoulder height. Now here's where it changes. We shift. Top hand. They're still parallel as they dredge across parallel road, and then they turn all the way across. When you've turned at this point, the right hand comes underneath, uncross, exhale down. Just feel that. And come back into center. We're actually going to do another one on the opposite side. Parallel hands again. Inhale up. Stretching. Exhale, gentle. It's one of the movements that's very interesting because you're fully stretched out. Might even feel a little bit stressed. And turn. Parallel fingers, dredging all the way across. And again, turn, come around. Left hand comes under, uncross, and exhale. Soften, relax the elbows, relax the hands, come back into the Wuji posture facing the body. And one other Wuji movement that is a favorite is this Wuji fingers, Wuji palms. So fingertips are pointed in opposite ways, but in between, the field between the palms is the impression of a chi ball, right? So let's just play with that at the beginning so you can feel. The palms are always going to be facing each other. Now you're going to twist and intend inwards towards your body. So the fingertips kind of spin inwards in this posture. And you come back into center. And now left hand on top, right hand on the bottom. Gently torque in. Notice my shoulders are not up here. We're just going to sink and settle the shoulders. Inhale. And now left hand scoops under. Exhale, gentle squeeze. Inhale. And exhale. Right hand underneath. And so once you understood that the palms had to face each other, you would start rolling this ball any which way, but as long as the palms are facing each other, rolling towards you. Have your knees soft and relaxed, but the feet are stable. You can move it side to side, so you can go to one side. Long, steady breath. Even move the ball behind you. The knees stay stable in front. Smooth, even breathing. Now, this is the healing application, right? Soft movements, and you'll understand in a moment why it is also martial. Inhale, exhale, just steady, smooth, even breath. Come back to center. What is this movement? Why would it be considered martial? If done at higher speed, if someone was to kick you or headbutt you, this is what would happen. You would take their foot, you would take their head and turn, right? So this, with any speed, becomes a martial movement. Of course, we are not planning to hurt anybody. We are only using it as self-defense. And come back into the lower dantian. I'm going to finish with the guanyin movement. Step in. Ball of light between the palms. Inhale and open to the sides. The arms and hands face the earth. At the shoulder height, turn the palms back. Palms are now facing up. Inhale. The light of the stars, the sun, and the moon. Exhale. Down into the heart center. In gratitude for all that we have and all that we are. Sending healing out into the world to serve the greatest good. Honoring the earth, our hands come down. Forming a diamond of light at the dantian, the thumbs touch the belly button. We draw up from this deep well of our potential, offering it out into the world to serve the greatest good. We rise together. At the shoulder height, turn the hands down. Send healing energy into the earth so that the earth too is provided for. At the end, we crisscross one hand over another, it doesn't matter which. Come back into the lower dantian. Gentle squeeze from the perineum up. Gentle inhale. And exhale. Relax. All the joints relax. And bow. Okay.
Wow, so beautiful. I want to
Thank
learn
you.
this. When are you teaching it?
I'll be teaching this actually through the SHIP network in June, Sharon. So from June 14th, I'll begin. And it's a 7-week course. And I'll be teaching it right in until the summer, mid-August.
Wow. Well, I
Yes.
look forward to that. And do you have anything else coming up that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, if anyone wants to learn my schedule, they can go to Radiant Lotus Qigong, spelled QIGONG.com. But I do have live programs this year, taking a chance at that, and I'm going to be teaching at Kripalu. It's actually the Wuji Hundun Qigong program over a weekend, so you can get a quick infusion. And that's Memorial Day weekend. And then I teach after that. I'll be doing the 5-day women's program at Kripalu as well. And the only other live teaching I'll be doing is at Omega Institute from October 23rd to 28th. And there's also, of course, the on-demand programs that I do on Shift Network. So if people are interested, they can look into that more. But it promises to be an exciting year, Sharon, because it seems that at least that the world is opening up a little more, and we'll have more opportunities to physically engage and feel each other's energy in real time.
Yeah. Boy, I think a lot of us have really missed that. And
Yeah.
I look forward to that. And God, who knows? Maybe I'll show up at Kripalu for your weekend. That would be
I
so
would love
amazing.
that. Yeah, welcome. I would love that.
So thank you so much, Daisy, for an always interesting and uplifting conversation. And thank you all out there in our audience for listening. It's always a pleasure to host these events, and we couldn't do it without you.
Thank you so much, Sharon.